I think you're right. Good evening, everybody. Well, I anticipated this pretty much tonight because it is a holiday week. And even though some people should have let me know that they're not going to be here, but I anticipated something like this and I planned for it accordingly. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our halfway point of our class, week 4. And tonight we will complete the accounting cycle. And then after tonight, head into other areas of managerial accounting and then finance to complete the second half of the class. I am struggling this evening, and I'll go as far as I can. I got food poisoning last week, and it has knocked me out of commission for the last few days. I thought I got rid of it yesterday, but it came back and hit me again today. So I'll go as far as I can. So I apologize if I have to uh, leave the scene. We're going to talk about the closing process of the accounting cycle. I have posted a problem in week 4 file folder, problem 3-7A from your textbook on pages 137 and 138. This will be a practice problem for you this coming week, and we will review this in class July 8th, next Tuesday. There's no graded work this week. We have a week off and planning for the holiday break, anticipating for this. So we'll pick up this problem next week in class. I would like you to do this on your own this week. This is, again, not for a grade, but it's up to you to set it up in a spreadsheet. You can use the samples that we've already done in this class. But this is a perfect example of the next assignment number 3, which will be given to you next week. And that'll be due on July 13th, I believe. So we'll talk about that in a minute. Also this week is a good time for all of you to assess where you are in our class at the halfway point. With the completion of assignment 2, we have completed roughly a third of our grade, 30%. The next 20% has been posted tonight, the case paper and the case paper topic. We'll run through that tonight. The case paper is now posted in your assignments file folder. That case paper is a financial statement analysis of the company that you all have selected in the first week and have done some work on already in your assignments. The case paper is due on Sunday, July 27th. It represents 20% of your course grade. And you have roughly 4 weeks to do it. Naturally, extensions are available if you need extra time, but the last possible due date for that assignment is Sunday, August 3rd. But also that last week, you'll be doing some additional work like the final examination. So we'll talk about that case paper topic that's been posted today, and it's due on Sunday, July 27th. It's an MBA student financial analysis and interpretation of the companies that you have selected this year. Our next graded work in assignment format will be next week, as I just said, and that'll be one assignment on completing the accounting cycle, which we're talking about tonight, and which we're looking at a review problem that I mentioned earlier, problem 3-7A. Once we're done with assignment 3, we only have one more assignment, which will be on managerial accounting. And then the last 2 weeks of the course, we'll talk about finance, and that'll be included. That finance work will be included in the final examination due on August 3rd, which will be posted and given to you on Monday, July 28th. So there's we are in class. So we have 30% of the grade completed. Another 20% has been added on this evening, bringing up our grade to 50%. So we roughly have at the halfway point, 50% of the grade still to be determined in this class. So I urge you this week in our 4th week and halfway point to make sure you check with your grade center, making sure all your grades have been posted and you can see the grade cumulative average in your grade center and know exactly where you stand heading into the second half of this course. I will have the assignment 2 grades posted no later than Thursday of this week. I graded many of them today, but again, we have some students who have yet to post. So I'm going to wait for them to post in the next day or so before I start passing out solutions to that assignment. Assignment 1 has been graded as my email indicated over the last weekend, and those grades have been posted. The solutions have been distributed on an individual basis to those students that have completed their work, so you can see the answers of some of those questions. So that's where we stand as far as the infrastructure of this class is concerned at 4 weeks. Another thing I would like you to consider at the 4th week of the class, if you have any issues with myself, with the course, with the grading, with the flow, with the platform, now is a good time to get it out in the open. If you have any issues or concerns that I can help you with. Again, one of the difficult things about a remote class is, yes, I lecture on a Tuesday night, but I have very little contact with you unless you have questions during the course of the week. So again, if you have concerns at this halfway point, if your grades are not what you think you should have received, if you feel a little shortchanged, now's the time to talk with me about that. I am not going anywhere. I'll probably go to the hospital the way I feel tonight. No, only teasing. But I'm not going anywhere this weekend. I will be around. So if any of you want to chat about your course or about what's going on at the halfway point, please feel free to initiate a text, an email, set up a Zoom, or whatever. So that's where we stand heading into this week number 4. Speaking of the case paper, I want to go over that a little bit tonight. Some of you have probably not done something like this before in your study. So this might require a little bit of thought, a little bit of review. Since there's no other work due this week, this might be a good time to download this, take a look at it, see if you understand what I'm asking. And if you have any questions or concerns, either email me or ask me next week in class about that. The case paper is a project paper where you're doing a financial analysis, and here's the questions of the case, both in a Word doc and a PDF format. This paper is to be done in APA format, 5 pages minimum, an analysis of your companies. And here are our students, and if I have this wrong for any of our students, be sure to let me know, because I do advanced work in prepping myself for your work. So as you can see, we have Melissa, you have Southern California Edison or Edison International. Ying, you have Tesla. Alexandria, you have Apple. Jason, you have Alphabet. Jen Yu, you have Tesla. Carlos, you have Walmart. Thomas, you have NVIDIA. And Victoria, who's not with us tonight, has Lululemon, whatever the hell that is. All right, and so those are the teams the companies that you have selected. And what I want you to do with these companies is the following. I want you to do an APA format, a financial statement interpretation and ratio analysis of your designated company. Please take the company that you chose in week number 1, which many of you have already done in your first 2 assignments, some work, and some of you have already done some of the preliminary work for this case paper. Perform a financial analysis using the available data for the most recent fiscal year. For many of you, that will be 12/31/24, and compare that year to the previous fiscal year for your company. That will be 12/31/23. Excuse me, typo. Your analysis should include at least one analytical equation from each of the 4 sections of financial analysis given in Chapter 13, detailed on page 512 and 517 of your text. Now, I will post that financial statement analysis after class tonight, so you have that, so you can just don't have to rifle through your textbook, and you can take a look at those analytical equations. I will post those to this case paper file folder after class tonight. In other words, you need to take one equation from liquidity and efficiency, one equation from solvency, one equation from profitability, one equation from market prospects. Now, if you pay attention to your original assignments, you've done some of that work already. But now you have to go a step further in your analysis. Your analysis should include the following interpretations in your APA formatted paper. Has the firm improved its performance from the previous year, 12/24 to 12/23? Is the firm, in your opinion, managed efficiently? As a potential investor, would you consider this a stock you would purchase? As an investor, would you consider this a stock you purchase? The case goes on. A financial statement analysis of the company of their student selection. Structurally, the students will present the case as follows. The student will identify which ratios, remember 1 per section in each ratio class. Each ratio class should be presented as part of the case. The ratio analysis should show at least 2 fiscal periods. We've talked about that. A trend in order to adequately develop performance patterns. The financial statements to be the source of the ratio calculations should be the most recent 10K filings of your company. The 10K for the fiscal year 24, the 10K of the fiscal year 23. Now that 10Ks are big documents, so you can't print them out. You have to download them and then review them on your computer. They're all 300, 200, 400 pages long. If the industry standards are available, they can also be presented only to complement your analysis. I'm not looking for industry standards, but you can do an analysis of the trends of the company by taking a look how they've performed internally, but also what does that represent in relationship to comparison to the industry that they're in. Comparison to industry averages should never be your primary measurement of relative performance or primary focus of your presentation. Your primary focus of this financial statement analysis is to compare the trends internally within the company. You can take a snapshot of the industry and compare that to how the company is performing. The use of charts, graphs, tables are strongly encouraged to present the data for analysis. Finally, within each class, a conclusion on the overall financial performance will be presented within the overall context of the ratio analysis. There must be a logical integration of the significant amounts identified in the financial statement review to the selected ratios. In the overall presentation, the key concept to remember is that you should focus on why or how come or what caused, and not the what was of the ratio trend analysis. Anybody can see that the ratio or the trend is down or up. I want to know why, how come, what caused in your interpretation those ratios to either go up or down or stay the same. The student will then present an overall conclusion based solely on the overall financial performance presented on the relative strength of the company. Again, not comparing it to how it did to the industry. Finally, based solely on the financial performance of the company as presented in the ratio analysis, the student will recommend selling, hold, or buy stock in the company. That's your case analysis. A detailed interpretation and calculation of 4 key equations taken from those 4 areas of financial statement analysis. Presentation, APA format, title page, abstract page, references, double space your text, Times Roman font, 12 point. If you do not have Times Roman, if you do not have 12 point, if you do not double space, you lose 10 points. So please note that. Minimum of 5 pages, a maximum of 10 pages. I don't want a lot of writing. I want a lot of detailed, succinct, quick analysis. If any of you need a refresher course in APA formats, here's a link that can help you with that format. The following outline is a simple example of how the case could be organized, and presented. Note this is merely a suggestion. The student is encouraged to present the material how he or she wishes if the material presented is logical, orderly, and flows easy to read. Think about you're doing a financial presentation to the management of the company and to potential investors. The outline of your work in the APA format should include an introduction and brief history of the company selected, financial statement, balance sheet, and income statement, key account identification, ratio analysis by those 4 classes. Remember, 4 classes. You select one equation from each class. I will post all the different types of equations that are associated with those classes after class this evening. And then you have a conclusion. You should do a conclusion for each class and then a conclusion summing up what those classes tell you into one final interpretation about what you see about how this company is managed. For any of you who are thinking about a career in financial statement analysis, entrepreneurial career, a career in financial management, this is up your alley because this is what all those people do to analyze and review financials or even their own company. You will be docked points if you give me more than 10 pages. And the minimum of 5 pages is the minimum because remember, a title page is 1 page. An abstract introduction page is 1 page. References is 1 page. So there's 3 pages already in your document. So if you give me 5 pages, that means you're only writing 2 pages. I don't know if that's going to be enough unless you really can isolate that information. So there you go. I'm sure most of you have done APA format before. If any of you struggle with that, I'm at this level of study, MBA, I do not post a sample paper. I do not post a sample paper. You're on your own on how the format is and how you set it up. But if you need or struggle with the format, click on this link and it helps you with the format of APA if you've not done this before. So again, for our students, you have Southern California Edison, Tesla, Apple, Tesla again, Walmart, NVIDIA, Lululemon, and Alphabet. You're doing a financial analysis for the last 2 fiscal years of your company by taking one equation from the 4 areas of financial analysis: liquidity and efficiency, solvency, profitability, and market prospects. and then you answer these 3 questions in your interpretation. Take a look at that this week. Take a look at what type, where you get the 10K information for your companies. Download those 10K documents so you have them on your hard drive or on your computer. Begin to map out which equations you might want to select of the 4 in those 4 groups. Don't have to start on your paper this week, but kind of map it out. See what you're looking at. There's going to be a lot of data for you there, especially in those 10Ks. You need to organize that, sort it out, and condense it to what I'm asking in this analysis. You have roughly 4 weeks. Well, you really have 5 weeks, because if you get an extension, you have until Sunday, August 3rd to get this done. This paper is designed to take you anywhere from 10 to 15 hours of work. It's 20% of your course grade. I will be standing by. I'm not going to do your work for you. I'm not going to tell you where anything is, but I will help you any way I can to point you in the right direction and give you any guidance you need. But for MBA students, this is a typical case analysis of accounting and finance, of the financial interpretation of real world companies. This is something you have to do in order to graduate. It's a necessity. I'm here to help you any way I can. But you got plenty of time to do it. You got an off week this week to study this, download it, and begin your work. You got an off week the 3rd week of July. So you got some time, but I urge you, you're making a huge mistake in your viability of passing this course if you wait to the last weekend in July to do this work. Trust me on that one. You will not do well. Piecemeal it out, take your time, ask questions, seek answers, map out an outline of your work, and then write it. Now you talked earlier that I might have scared some people away. Now I'm scaring some people. No, okay. But this is typical MBA work. This is good. I get all excited about this because I know this is the real world. This is what you'll do. If somebody says you have an MBA from Laverne, give me an example of what you did as financial statement analysis for a company. Oh, I did Tesla. I reviewed 4 key ratios and determined their efficiency in management and their efficiency in their financials in a paper. Oh, you got that paper for me to look at? Yeah, here it is. Trust me, that's a good thing. So this is a key part of your study of graduate work. Okay. I doubt it there'll be any questions at this early juncture, but does anybody have any questions?
Not pertaining to this, but are you able to stick around for a few minutes after class?
And who am I speaking to?
Jason, I'm sorry, I still don't have my webcam, sir. You know what? I'm just gonna open up my laptop and use that so you can at least see who I am.
Jason, I'm sure you're a good-looking guy. That's not a deal breaker. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
Okay. So yeah, yes, I will be around afterwards if you have any, if you want to talk, because I know you mentioned that to me early before.
Yeah, it's just something that I kind of need to talk about. So I maybe need like 10, 15 minutes of your time.
That's fine.
All right.
Any other questions or concerns? The good thing about this is, if you're smart, and I know you all are, just read it this week. Read the case, get the 10Ks, map it out, maybe take a look at which equations you're thinking about using, and we'll go from there. Just to give you a quick refresher, let me bring this up. Probably can't see it very well, but you can download this. Here are the sections of profitability, asset management, better known as solvency, liquidity, debt management, all that kind of thing. Here are the four areas and the variety of equations and financial statement analysis that you can choose from. I want one equation from each one of these areas. One, not two, not three, one. So you might pick the equations so they kind of are in sync with each other. Nah, that's giving away too much of what I'm looking for. But you might want to take a look at that this first week. Okay, what are the equations I have to choose from in these areas? What do I need to do? And that might be something. And I'll post this listing to this case paper file folder after class this weekend or this tonight, so you can have it and download. Okay, that's what we're looking at. So again, those are the areas, one equation from each, and there's your paper format. Do not, because many times it's easy to compare financial performance with the industry. That is not what I'm looking for in this statement, in this paper. I'm looking for a comparison internally within the company. Their financial statements are public information. You're a potential investor. Does this look like a place you might want to invest in? You're a manager of the company. Is this company being managed well? You're a lender of the company. You've lent them money. Is my loan safe with these guys? Most of the firms that you all have chosen this summer are pretty solid ground. Some of them are going through some changes this current year, but in the last 2 fiscal years, most of your companies have done very well. So I don't think you're going to have too many challenges about management, efficiency, and quality, but you might find something. Okay, so that's the case paper. We're up and running on this. We got 4 weeks, really 5. So this gives you something to chew on the second half of our course. And it kind of summarizes finance and accounting in one type of case, which is a good thing for our MBA students. Okay, now let's close out our financial accounting review for the first half of this course. It's closing the books. We've discussed it in prior classes. We've looked at it. Now we're actually going to do it. In the first 2 assignments, in the first assignment, you did original journal entries, you posted them to the ledger, and you did a trial balance. In the second assignment, you did some adjusting entries, posted to the adjusted trial balance, and did some financial statements. In assignment number 3, which will be next week, which you're practicing in problem 3-7A over the weekend, if you want to, we're doing closing entry financial statements from the adjusted trial balance that is given you. You don't have to calculate it like you did in assignment 2. And then you prepare again, one more time, financial statements. But here you go the next and last step. You do the closing journal entries to close the temporary accounts and then do a post-closing trial balance. So that's our subject for tonight. Why do we close certain accounts and not close all the accounts? And that's our lecture for this evening. We've mentioned this before, but we close certain accounts in our financial accounting chart of accounts that are temporary. In other words, those accounts that have only 1 year of life. Revenues, expenses, withdrawals, or what is also called dividends. Those are temporary accounts. They last for 1 year. and then they're done. Because why? Well, you're going to be looking at this partly in your case paper. You're comparing one fiscal year to the other. How did we do in profits from one year to the next? We wouldn't be able to do that interpretation if we didn't close the temporary accounts at the end of every year to see what that revenue, what those expenses, what those profits were for that year. If we don't close them, they're all going to be intermingled year after year, and that doesn't tell us anything. That's the purpose of this. Asset accounts, liability accounts, and owner's equity accounts, like common stock, are permanent accounts. They do not close. They go on as long as the company is in operations. You do not close those accounts. You only close revenue, expense. If it's a proprietorship, withdrawals. If it's a company, dividends. So the closing process is to take the adjusted trial balance that you have, identify which accounts need to be closed and zero them out, do those closing entries, and then prepare one final trial balance that tells you what accounts are going to be available and move into the next fiscal year, which, as we just indicated, are assets, liabilities, and owner's equity accounts. Identify for closing, record the entries, and prepare a post-closing trial balance. In other words, we're setting up the books for the next fiscal year. As we've talked about before, closing entries are really quite simple. If there's credit balances in the revenue accounts, you debit them to close them. If there are debit balances in the expense accounts, you credit them to close them. Where's the offsetting debit and credit go to? The temporary account called income summary. If you have dividends or owner's capital or retained earnings, the income summary closings of revenue expense go into that retained earnings account or owner's capital. And the final closing entry is to close out withdrawals or dividends to retained earnings or that owner's capital account. Those are the 4 steps that you have to do to close the books. And here they are right here. This is taken right out of the textbook. This is a nice little cheat sheet of the closing process. Exhibit 4.3, very nice, concise. It shows the 4 steps that we just talked about. Look at here. The expense accounts, depreciation, salaries, insurance, rent, supplies, utilities, all have debit balances. I credit those accounts. They are now closed. And the debit goes into income summary. The revenue accounts, consulting revenue, rental revenue, all have credit balances. You debit those revenue accounts to close them. They're now zero. And the offsetting credit goes into income summary. The income summary account now shows the net income of the company for the period of time. The difference between revenues, $81.50, and expenses, $43.65. You now have a credit balance of $3,785. That's your profit for the year. And then you close out or zero out the income summary account by debiting that credit balance or profits, and you close them to the capital or the retained earnings account, depending on what type of business it is, into that capital account as a credit. Finally, the 4th step, you have dividends or withdrawals with a debit balance. You credit that account to zero it out, and that debit goes into the retained earnings or capital account, thus getting your final balance. When it's all said and done, all the temporary accounts now are zero. Expenses, zero. Revenues, 0. Withdrawal, excuse me. Excuse me. Sorry. Withdrawals or dividends, 0. And the net effect of all that activity is now sitting in your capital account, either retained earnings or the specific owner's capital account. I see no assets, no liabilities being closed in any of these transactions. That's the closing process. Print out this slide, note it in your textbook. This is your cheat sheet to close the books of any problem. Naturally, some of the counts will be different, but the process is the same. The income summary is the flow-through account that summarizes revenues and expenses. And again, I know what you're thinking. I thought this when I was 21 years old looking at this for the first time. Who cares? Why are we doing this? As I just said about 10 minutes ago, we're doing this so we can set up the temporary accounts, revenue, expense, dividends, withdrawal, so they have 0 balances so we see what's going to happen in the next fiscal year for those accounts. What's going to be our revenues in 2025? Oh, okay. What's going to be our expenses in 2025? Oh, okay. What's going to be our dividends or withdrawals in 2025? We wouldn't be able to know that unless we close these accounts in 2024. That's why we do it. So this is huge for any managed efficiently company. And then once we are completed this process, we prepare the final trial balance of a company. It's a closing of it's the post-closing trial balance, which lists all the permanent accounts and their balances after all the closing entries. Naturally, as in any trial balance, the debits must equal the credits. And here's an example of the problem that we just looked at. Remember, we just closed these accounts, and let's go back. Notice we closed revenue, expense, and withdrawals all into the capital account. The C. Taylor Capital started the year with $30,000. They had a profit of $3,785, the difference between revenues and expenses, and that profit is increasing the capital account. And they had withdrawals of $200, decreasing the capital account to $33,585 capital balance. And notice if you go to the post-closing trial balance, C. Taylor Capital, $33,585. In that one number is accumulated all the temporary accounts, revenues, expenses, and withdrawals. Notice all the cash, receivables, asset accounts, including accumulated depreciation, all the liabilities, the payables, the unearned are all the same as they were before. No changes. And golly Gomer, we did it right. The trial balance of post-closing tells us $43,045 debits and credits. Now we can officially get our paycheck because we closed the books and now we've set the book straight for the next fiscal year. And we begin the process all over again. That's the final step of this accounting cycle that you need to do in our next assessment in assignment 3. Here's something that really gives you a stomach ache after you look at it, but it's kind of a good picture of the work of the accounting cycle. Wait a minute, I better have a shot of whiskey here on this one. Hang on. Just teasing. But here's the accounting cycle that we just reviewed these first 4 weeks of our course. Analyze transactions. What accounts do they go in? We journalize those transactions into journal entries. we post those journal entries to the general ledger. We take those journal entries and we prepare an unadjusted trial balance. We adjust. We do the adjusting entries. This is assignment 2. We do an adjusting entries. We prepare an adjusted trial balance, which you did in assignment 2. Then from that adjusted trial balance, you prepare the financial statements, the income statement, the balance sheet, the statement of owner's equity. Once we prepare those final statements, we do the closing entries of the temporary accounts. And the final part of the process is to prepare and post the closing trial balances. You do not have to worry about this 10th step, reverse and post additional entries. That is not part of our study. Textbook is trying to make you depressed by putting that there, so don't worry about it. But this is what we just did. 1, 2, 3, 4. That was assignment 1. 5, 6, 7. That was assignment 2. 8, 9. That's assignment 3. Congratulations. You are now officially an accountant. Okay. That's what we're doing. That's what we've done. Now, my interpretation of the grading in assignment 1, some of us still had a little bit of difficulty posting the, I'm not going to talk too much about it because we still have some students that have yet to post their assignment 1 because they're out of the country. But some of us had a little bit of a problem with our trial balance. Remember, the trial balance should only have one number, either on the debit or credit side. There not should be 2 numbers for cash. There should not be 2 numbers for receivables. You should net out the debits and credits and have whatever the account balance is on the debit or credit side. Some of us had two numbers for each account. That's not possible. You have to summarize those as a total account balance. That was the main problem for some of us in assignment 1. I know the next problem in assignment 2 will be making sure you do those correct adjustments and post them properly to a new trial balance. That can be difficult, especially if you are a little uneasy about those adjusting entries. But we'll sort this out, take a look at it. That's why we have an extra week this week between assignments so we can sort it all out, make sure we understand everything before we get into that final work. Another thing I wanted to talk about here is a classified balance sheet. A classified balance sheet means to break down assets and liabilities into 2 areas, current and non-current. Current assets and non-current or long-term assets. Current liabilities or long-term or non-current liabilities. When somebody says classify your balance sheet, it means breaking down those accounts that are short-term and long-term. That's a classified balance sheet. In assignment number 3, I'm going to ask you to do a classified balance sheet. In assignment 2, all I had you do is list all the assets and list all the liabilities. In assignment 3, I want you to tell me which of those assets are current, a life of less than 1 year, and which of those assets are longer or non-current with a year or over 1 year of life. The same thing with liabilities. And it's not that difficult. Here's a classified balance sheet. Notice current assets are cash, short-term investments, receivables, inventory, and prepaids. So if you have assets and they fall within those categories, those types of accounts, those are all considered current assets, they have a life of less than 1 year. In other words, they turn over, in some cases, daily. But look at the long-term assets. Those assets that you own that have a longer than 1 year life. Notes receivable, investments, plant assets, equipment, buildings, less accumulated depreciation, land, intangible assets, which you're not going to have anything involved in that. Don't worry about that. But notice it just categorizes the assets into short-term and long-term. And the same thing in liabilities. Note, payables. Anything that's a payable is current. If it's a bond, if it's a note, that's long-term. So that's the key difference between assignment 2 and assignment 3 is I'm going to ask you to do a classified balance sheet, breaking down the assets into short-term and long-term, breaking down the liabilities short-term to long-term. That's a key. And I'm going to be looking at that. Here's an example from your textbook that shows that example. And we're going to practice that example over the weekend. The definition of current assets are assets expected to be sold, collected, or used within 1 year or the company's operating cycle. Short term, they turn over quickly. Long terms are held for more than 1 year, like plan assets or long-term investments. Don't worry about intangible assets. Here's an example of an intangible asset. If Coca-Cola has a copyright on their name, which they do, Coca-Cola, that's an intangible asset. That copyright of that name, Coke, Coca-Cola, is given an economic value. That economic value is called an intangible asset. I am sure Donald Trump on his financial statements has the name Trump as an intangible asset. Just the name Trump means a lot to a lot of people, and I'm sure that's given a value on his financials, his personal financials. Intangible assets, but you guys don't have to worry about that here.
So, Professor Hassey, would another word for that be like?
Again, you don't have to worry about this. If you want to ask the question, you can. That's okay.
But so goodwill would also be seen as an intangible asset as well, correct?
That's correct. Goodwill, in my terms, I used to be a CPA. Goodwill to me is bogus. It's a bogus number. It means to me, as an investor, absolutely squat. But due to generally accepted accounting principles, you have to place a value on goodwill. To my mind, it's a bogus interpretation. That's why I don't like to spend a lot of time on it.
So would it be safe it's a way of cooking the books a little bit?
I didn't understand your question.
I said, could you inflate that number to kind of cook the books a little bit, or?
You're damn right you can. That's why I think it's bogus. And public accounts go along with it. And don't get me started on this. But yeah, it's fun with numbers, which I don't like. Okay. Now, if there's any CPAs or public accountants in the audience, you're probably mad at me for saying this because it's taking a little bit away from your justification of what you're doing, but deal with it. All right, current liabilities. Current liabilities are debts that are due within a year. 30-day accounts payable. You have a loan that's due in the next year. That's a current liability. Just like assets, long-term liabilities are due longer than 1 year. You got a bond that's due in 2030. That's a long-term liability. You got a mortgage on some land or some buildings that's due in 2040. That's a long-term liability. And naturally, there's no current or long-term equity. It's all the same. So those are the key components of what is called a classified balance sheet. And you need to be familiar with that in setting that up. The rest of the chapter, you're on your own because it tells you a lot about the analysis in your paper. Current ratio and other entries involved with financial analysis. But I'm going to give you a document that summarizes all this so you don't really have to pay much attention. Another thing about chapter 4 that I did not cover, because this is technically not an accounting class. It's an MBA class as an intro to accounting. The first part of chapter 4 talks about what is called a worksheet, where you summarize various components of the accounting cycle: unadjusted trial balance, adjusting entries, adjusted trial balance, income statement, and balance sheet, all in one spreadsheet. Now, the reason why we're not studying it, because I consider this class corporate accounting. No corporations do worksheets. They just have too many accounts. A worksheet is good for the mom and pop small business, but it's not good for the major corporations. All right. So that's why I do not go over it. It also, at this point in time, this is the last thing you guys want to worry about, is putting together a worksheet like this, because then you still have to do the same stuff. You got to do an official balance sheet, income statement, statement of equity. So the worksheet I do not go over in this class because it's not necessary for what we're trying to do in this intro MBA type of accounting class. So I did not deal with it. Okay, now, here's a problem from your textbook that I have selected to do next week in class on Tuesday. It's not for a grade. It's practice what we just talked about and the closing process. It's on page 127 and 137 and 138 of your textbook, problem 3-7A. The name of the problem is preparing financial statements and closing entries, the last two steps of the accounting cycle that we just talked about. You don't have to worry about journal entries, trial adjusting entries. I give you here the adjusted trial balance as of December 31st of the company, $411,900. From this adjusted trial balance, you go to the top of page 138 and do two things. Prepare the income statement, the statement of retained earnings, and the balance and a classified balance sheet for the year ended December 31st. So take these balances and prepare the financials. Once you do the financials, prepare the closing entries of the temporary accounts. And then when we come into class next week, we will do the post-closing trial balance in class. If you want to go ahead and do it, go right ahead. But this is what your assignment number 3 is going to look like next week. This is good practice for it before you sit down and do it as an assignment next week. It'll be a different problem. This is steps 8 and 9 of that accounting cycle we just saw. I give you the adjusted trial balance. Now you sort it out in two areas. Do the necessary financial statements and then close the books. I'm not giving you a spreadsheet to do this on. I'd like you to set up a spreadsheet, or you can download the spreadsheets that we have from prior weeks and clear them out, use those as your template. That's not a problem. But I want you to set it up for this company, Tybalt Construction, prepare the financials, and close the books. This is something you can do on your own this weekend. If you don't want to do it, that's okay by me. We're going to do this in class next week. This is our practice for assignment 3. Again, as I said earlier, I didn't want to, of course, I am kind of burdening you here with this, but it's not for a grade, so it's not a burden. I didn't want to load you up with a lot of graded work this week on a holiday weekend, because I know some of our students are going out of town. But if you want to do this and prep for this, you could maybe do it next Monday in preparation for our class on Tuesday. This is good practice to complete the accounting cycle and complete the first 4 weeks of our course. So this is located right here. In our week 4. Here it is right here. Here's the problem, 3-7A. There it is right there. You can download this. If you don't have a textbook, just download it. There's your sheet. And you can practice this. If you don't want to do it, again, this is not for a grade. I know some of us are, what I've seen in the first 2 assignments, some of us are pretty up to speed. I don't see too many problems in you completing the accounting cycle. Others of us need to practice maybe a little bit more. And this will be a good practice for you to better prepare for the assignment next week and get a better grade. So that's the work. If any of you don't have a text, you want to take a look at the slides that I just talked about. Here's our Chapter 4 PowerPoint that you can download that have those slides that I just did. It's a good review. Once we complete this week, next week we'll review problem 3-7. I will post assignment 3, and then we'll get into the next section of our course. We're going to talk about managerial accounting, a review of retail and inventory accounting in business. And we're off to the second half of our class. So to review, 2 things to concern yourself if you want to get a handle on where we're going in the second half of the class. You want to take a look at the case that I just posted that's due in 4 weeks. May take a look at it, begin to download the information you need for your companies, and begin to map out your strategy for time management for that case. Secondly, if you feel you need to practice the closing of the accounting cycle, this problem 3-7A, which is not for a grade, is a good way of practicing that material. If you got a pretty good handle on it, that's okay. We're going to review that in class next Tuesday, July 8th. That's all the material that you're responsible for this week. There's no grading. This is an off week for grading, one of the few that we have in this 8-week class. But it's a holiday week, and you guys deserve it. You've worked hard up to this point. So, my last point of this evening is that if any of you are totally lost, and I will see that as I start posting the assignment 2 this week, if you're totally lost and need some help, I will be available this coming weekend if you want to do a Zoom or have any additional discussions with me to perhaps get up to speed, and you can use that problem 3-7 as practice to get up to speed. I don't see too many people that lost. Just need to work a little bit more, work out, understand the infrastructure of accounting and how each one of these accounting cycles steps go. I think we just need practice on that. But if you do feel uncomfortable and need a review session, I'm available this coming weekend, Saturday and Sunday. If you want to get together on a Zoom, I won't be on campus, but Zoom will do fine. If you need to meet with me, just let me know. We'll set it up and I can go over any material you want for that. I have a good sense that most of us are in pretty good shape, but there's still some work. Some of us still need to practice a little bit and get a handle on the. It's not so much doing the entries and understanding the steps. It's understanding the language, what's being asked, and how to interpret it. That's a key thing. And the bad thing about all this, that's the nature of your case paper, is understanding the language, understanding the interpretation of what the numbers tell you to effectively write and explain it in your paper. So that's the steps, and that's where we're leading to in this next second half, is you being able to look at accounting data, look at financial data, and interpret it. What does it tell you? What does it mean? What does it tell you about the efficiency of an organization? If you ever had to deal with a financial planner in your own personal financial life, one of the first things financial planners do is they say, okay, show me all your accounts. Let me see your bank statements. Let me see your credit card statements. Let me see all your investments statements. Why do they want to see all those statements? Because they're going to review them and interpret them, and it's going to tell them if you have a handle on what how you're managing your finances. If you have a lot of credit card debt, if you have a large balance in your checking account that's just sitting there without earning any interest, they review and interpret that information and then help you manage it. Well, that's exactly what you're doing in your case paper. You're looking at accounting data and interpreting it, explaining it to you, and then you explain it to me in your paper. That's a key to strategic management, critical thinking. I hate to use those words, but I have to, in MBA study. So that's why we're doing this, and that's why it's important for you to move on in your studies at the MBA level. Okay, I am running out of gas. I lasted an hour, so that's better than I thought I would. Does anybody have any questions or concerns after I've rambled on about this closing process? Don't be afraid to come and see me. Ask me questions. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to ask me questions about the case paper. I might tell you, I'm sorry, I can't answer that for you. Here's what I would do if I were you. That would be my typical question with the case paper. But if you're really struggling with understanding trial balances, really struggling with still understanding the nature of debits and credits, now is the weekend to come and see me and get some additional guidance. Okay? That's really make you feel better heading into the second half of the course. Any questions? All right. Have a safe 4th of July. If any Canadians in the audience tonight, which I happen to be one half Canadian, happy Canada Day today. Today is the Independence Day and national holiday of the 51st state of Canada. Oh, sorry, if I said that, my family would kill me, of Canada. So happy Canada Day to everybody.
So,
And everybody have a safe July 4th, and stay away from those knuckleheads who set off cherry bombs, and have a wonderful holiday with your families. And I'll see you guys all next Tuesday, and I'll post this video probably in an hour or so, since it gets a lot shorter. It'll post up quicker, and I'll post that financial statement and information for you to look at for your case paper. Everybody good?
are you still good to see me for a couple minutes, or you want to go ahead and
Relax,
walk out?
Jason. I got you. Don't worry about it. I'll be here. I'll be
All
here.
right. All right.
All right, everybody.
All right.
I'll talk to you next week. Adios.
Appreciate it, Professor.
Thank you,
Get out.
Professor.
Get out.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Jason, I'm going to turn off the video here. So just a second.
Okay. All right.